All right, let's talk about a word we use every single day, but maybe don't stop to think about all that much. Trust. You know, it's kind of the invisible glue holding our relationships, our teams, and really our whole society together. But what is it, really? Let's dive in and find out.
So let me ask you this. Just think about it for a second. When is that feeling of trust the most important? Is it when you're delegating a small task, or is it something deeper? When does it really, truly matter?
And there it is. It's in those moments of vulnerability. That's the absolute key. If there's nothing at stake, if you're not making yourself vulnerable in some way, then you don't really need to trust. Trust, you could say, begins right where your control ends.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with a solid definition, then we'll break down what makes someone trustworthy. After that, we'll see how trust actually develops, bust a few common myths, take a quick trip around the world, and then we'll land on the one big idea you should take away from all this.
Okay, first things first. Before we can talk about building trust or breaking it, we all need to be on the same page. What are we actually talking about when we use that word?
Now, this looks a little academic, I know, but stick with me. This is the most cited definition out there, and the wording is so important. Notice, it doesn't say trust is a feeling. It says it's a willingness to be vulnerable. It's an active choice you make, and you make it without that safety net of being able to watch over their shoulder or control the outcome.
And this breaks it down perfectly. See, trust is all about accepting risk, not trying to get rid of it. It's also fundamentally forward-looking. It's a bet on what someone is going to do. It's optimistic for sure, and it's open-ended. You don't just trust someone to do one task, you tend to trust the person.
So, if trust is the decision to make yourself vulnerable, then what is it about another person that makes you want to make that decision? Well, that's what we call trustworthiness.
The classic model boils trustworthiness down to these three things. First, do they have the skills? That's ability. Second, do they have my best interest at heart? That's benevolence. And third, do they operate by a set of principles I respect? That's integrity. But we can get even more specific.
And this is where the A-Rich model comes in. It's a fantastic framework that expands those three pillars into 5 clear behaviors. We've got agency, taking ownership; reliability, being consistent; integrity, being truthful; capability, having the skills; and finally, humility, knowing your limits. And that last one, it might just be the most important of all.
Yeah, humility. The research calls it the most critical safety valve. And this is such a huge point. You can be the most talented, skilled person in the entire world, but if you don't know your own limits, if you're not willing to ask for help when you're in over your head, you are not fully trustworthy. Humility is what keeps pure skill from becoming a dangerous liability. You know, trust isn't a light switch. You don't just flip it on. It's a dynamic thing that grows and changes over time, and it actually shows up in a few different ways along its journey.
So first, we often start with what's called presumptive trust. That's the trust you give a doctor just because they have a diploma on the wall, right? It's trust in a system. Then you've got initial trust or swift trust, which is based on those quick first impressions. But the real goal, the strongest kind, is grounded trust. And that's the one that's built slowly, over time, through lots and lots of reliable experiences.
All right, this next part is super important. Sometimes the absolute best way to understand what something is to get really clear on what it is not. So let's clear up some really common myths about trust.
First and foremost, trust is not control. In fact, they're pretty much opposites. Think about it. The more you feel the need to control a situation or a person, the less you're actually trusting them. Control wants to eliminate risk. Trust decides to accept it.
And trust isn't just placing a bet either. You might bet on a horse to win a race, but you don't trust the horse. A bet is a cold calculation of the odds. Trust needs something warmer. It needs a belief in the other person's good intentions, their benevolence.
And we mentioned this earlier, but it is so worth repeating. Trust is not the same as satisfaction. Satisfaction looks backward. It asks, did that go well this time? Trust looks forward. It asks, will they do well next time, even when I'm not watching? See the difference? And just 2 final little details. Trust is not just about competence. Someone can be brilliant at their job, but totally untrustworthy if they don't have integrity or humility. And a quick language point that actually matters. Technically, a task is entrustable. You can hand it over. The person doing it is trustworthy.
Okay, now let's zoom out for a second. The way we think about and build trust, it's not the same everywhere. It actually has a different cultural flavor depending on where you are in the world.
The sources point out this really fascinating difference. In a lot of Western cultures, trust is often granted up front. It's kind of the default setting in a professional relationship, and it's based on things like contracts and clear communication. But in many Eastern cultures, it's the other way around. Trust has to be earned over time. It's built on a personal connection, getting to know the human being behind the job title.
So, we have defined trust, we've dissected what makes someone trustworthy, and we've looked at how it all works. What's the one single idea you should really hold on to from all of this?
I think this quote from Professor Munir Gohar Barber just says it all. Trust is a rich, complex thing. It's a choice to be vulnerable. It is not about trying to control everything, and it's not just a simple gamble. At its heart, it's a deeply human judgment about character.
And so that leaves us with a final question for you. Now that you know the architecture, the components of agency, reliability, integrity, capability, and humility, the real question is, what are you going to do with it? How will you go out and build it?